I would like to welcome you to our walk through Romans. We are walking through the 7th chapter of the book of Romans, one of the most difficult chapters in the Bible as far as my opinion. And we're in verse number 17 today. We're going to attempt this week to finish the 7th chapter and get at the very beginning of the 8th chapter. But there's some things that I just need to talk to you about in a review very quickly. And this is the important part. We need to understand that our sin nature is dead. The Apostle Paul has talked about it. We have brought it to light in our teachings. Our sin nature is dead. But we need to get a biblical concept of what death is. We need to have an understanding of death that comes from the Bible. You see, death doesn't mean to cease to exist. If you think that your sin nature has ceased to exist, I've got news for you. You're wrong. Your sin nature didn't cease to exist, but as a believer, you have been separated from your sinful nature. Before you became a believer, your sinful nature dictated everything you did. But as soon as you surrendered and gave the control of your life over to Jesus Christ, you know what happened? Your sinful nature was separated from you. It no longer had control over you, and you got to a point where, and this is what we're going to talk about this week, where you are raging a warfare between the sinful nature and your spirit man. And so keep that in mind anytime that you're studying the Bible, especially the book of Romans, that death doesn't mean to cease to exist, but it means a separation. Now, Romans, the 7th chapter, verse number 17. So now I no longer am the one who doing it, but sin which dwells in me. What's the Apostle Paul saying? He's saying, I'm not the one that's doing it. Now, when he says I, he's talking about his spirit man. He's talking about the real man. You see, when a person is born again, you know what? Their spirit becomes completely new. They become a new creature. When I gave my life to Jesus, you know what? I looked the same. I sounded the same. You know what? I was a new creature on the inside, and I was free from sin. Why? Because I was a brand new creature on the inside. So the Apostle Paul says, so now, no longer am I the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. The sin that dwells on the inside of us. Now, moving on to verse number 18, Paul clarifies what he's talking about. He says, for I know that nothing good dwells in me. Now, you know, I've heard people say, oh, I'm just no good. You know what? You need to take these things in context. He said, nothing good dwells in me. And then he adds, that is in my flesh. We need to understand that the Apostle Paul wasn't saying that I'm not a good person, because you know what? That new creature on the inside of you is an amazing person. Now, we may not always see it, but that new creature is an amazing person, a person full of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness. So the Apostle Paul said that sin dwells, but where does it dwell in me? It dwells in my flesh. Now, the word flesh here is the Greek word sarx. And it means your living flesh. It's not your meat. There's a completely different word in the Greek language for meat. It's not this physical thing. It's your living flesh. And so he says that sin dwells in my living flesh. Your flesh has been used to years and years of getting its own way. Sin is in there constantly saying, do this, do this, do this. Before you became a Christian, you had no choice. You gave in to sin, whether that was the sin of pride, boasting, gossip, lust, overeating, whatever that sin was, you gave in to that. But now, as a believer, there's somebody new on the inside of you. You're new man, you're new creature. Now let's go on in verse number 18. For the willing is present in me. What's Paul saying? Inside of me, I'm wanting to live above sin. But the doing of good is not. In other words, Paul is saying, on the inside of me, there's something new. There's a new creature that's willing to live for God, that's willing to live a life of sanctification and of holiness. But I'm not always doing it. I'm not always doing what I want. And then he goes on. And he said, for the good that I want, I do not do, but I practice the very evil that I do not want. What's Paul saying? There's times in my life where I'm not doing what I want to do. What I want in my spirit man, I'm not doing that, but I'm doing and I'm practicing the evil. Now, where does that evil come from? It comes from our flesh. Do you understand? And so he says, but I practice the very evil that I do not want. And now verse number 20. But if I am doing the very thing I do not want, I know I am no longer the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. We need to understand, and this is vital, that when you sin, it's not you sinning. It's your flesh. Now, you are in control of your flesh. You are responsible for what your flesh does. We're not taking away that responsibility at all. But you are a new creature in Christ. And anything that causes you to doubt, you being a new creature is going to weaken you in this warfare between good and evil. You are a new creature in Christ. That's a fact. And so when you sin, it's not you, the new creature in Christ, that's sinning. No, it's that old flesh that's had its way in your life before you became a believer. Now, we're going to continue on in verse number 21 tomorrow. So make sure that you join us. Thank you for watching.